It was Christmas night, the kind that feels too quiet, like the world has paused to catch its breath. No cars passed outside, no distant laughter, not even the sound of a television from a neighbor's house. Just darkness, cold air pressed against the windows, and the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. We hadn't decorated this year. No tree, no lights, no music. It was just the two of us in the house, and we had made peace with the silence. Or at least, we thought we had. Then I heard its low, heavy footsteps moving deliberately across the floor above us. Not rushing. Not stumbling. Walking. My heart stopped. I held my breath, listening, hoping it was my imagination. But the sound came again, closer this time, clear enough to send a chill through my spine. There shouldn't have been anyone there. The doors were locked. The windows were shut. We live alone. I sat up, every sense suddenly awake, counting the seconds between each step. The house felt different now, smaller somehow, as if the walls were leaning in to hear it too. Christmas night has a strange way of making memories louder and fear sharper. I thought of all the reasons someone couldn't be there and all the reasons someone might be. Loss has a way of convincing you that emptiness is permanent, that silence means nothing is left. But as the footsteps continued, steady and unafraid, I realized something was wrong with that belief. Whatever was moving through our house that night didn't sound lost. It sounded familiar, and as I forced myself to stand, heart pounding, I knew that by the time the night was over, Christmas would never feel empty again. I stayed perfectly still, afraid that even the smallest movement would give me away. The footsteps continued above us, slow and measured, each one pressing down into the silence like it knew exactly where to step. The floorboards creaked in a pattern I recognized, the kind that only comes from age, from years of familiar weight passing over the same spots again and again. My first instinct was to wake the other person in the house, but my voice felt trapped somewhere between my chest and my throat. Fear has a way of convincing you that silence is safer than answers. I listened harder, counting the steps without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. Then a pause. My heart slammed so loudly I was sure it could be heard upstairs. I told myself it had to be the house settling, the cold tightening the wood the way it always did in winter. But houses don't walk. They don't hesitate. They don't stop, as if listening back. The footsteps resumed, this time closer to the staircase. I could almost picture it, whoever it was, moving carefully, not rushing, not hiding. That terrified me more than running ever could. An intruder would be quick, careless. This felt deliberate. Familiar. Like someone who knew the house well enough not to need light. I slid my feet slowly onto the cold floor, every muscle tense. The hallway outside my room was dark, but I could see the faint glow from the nightlight near the stairs. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, bending into shapes my mind was too willing to complete. The sound of the steps reached the top of the staircase and stopped again. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, finally finding my voice. There was no answer, just the soft hum of the heater and the ticking clock downstairs. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. Christmas night does strange things to the mind, especially when you've learned to associate it with absence instead of joy. But then the sound came again, one step down the stairs. Then another. Each step echoed through the house, louder now, unavoidable. Whoever it was wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. They were announcing themselves. My hands shook as I reached for the door frame, grounding myself. I remembered locking every door before bed, checking the windows twice, the way you do when you've convinced yourself you're alone in the world. We live alone. I repeated it in my head like a prayer, like a rule the night was supposed to obey. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and turned toward the living room. I could hear them clearly now, moving across the wooden floor, stopping near the couch. Something shifted, a soft scrape, like an object being nudged aside. My stomach dropped. That sound didn't belong to memory. That sound was real. I took one step into the hallway, then another, my breath shallow and sharp. The air felt colder out there, heavier, as if the house itself was holding onto something it didn't want to release. I strained to hear breathing, whispering, anything human. There was nothing. Just the quiet certainty that someone was there. And then, from the living room, came a sound that made my blood run cold. Not footsteps this time, but a slow exhale, almost a sigh, familiar, gentle. The kind of sound someone makes when they finally arrive somewhere they've been trying to reach for a very long time. I stood there longer than I should have, frozen in the hallway, my body caught between instinct and disbelief. The house had gone completely still again, the kind of stillness that presses against your ears until you start hearing your own heartbeat. Whatever had moved through the living room was no longer moving. That terrified me more than the footsteps ever had. I forced myself forward, one slow step at a time, careful not to let the floorboards betray me. The hallway felt longer than it ever had before, stretching with every breath I took. Shadows clung to the walls, thick and watchful, bending around framed photographs and corners I knew by heart. Every familiar detail now felt slightly wrong, like a memory you return to only to realize it has changed without asking your permission. The living room came into view gradually. The couch sat exactly where it always did. The small table by the window was untouched. Nothing looked disturbed except the lamp. It was tilted, just slightly, as if someone had brushed past it. My throat tightened. I knew I hadn't left it that way. I listened again. No footsteps. No breathing. No sound at all. Hello, the word came out broken, barely louder than a whisper. I half expected an answer, a voice. An apology. Anything to explain what I was seeing. But the silence remained, thick and unmoving. I took another step inside the room, then another. The air felt different here, warmer somehow, carrying a faint scent that didn't belong to the present. It took me a moment to recognize it, pine. Not fresh, not sharp but softened by time, like something remembered rather than smelled. My chest tightened as memories stirred, uninvited and heavy. I moved toward the window, checking the lock with shaking fingers. It was secure. Curtains drawn tight. No sign of forced entry. My eyes scanned the room again, slower now, more desperate to find logic where none seemed to exist. That's when I noticed the photograph on the shelf. It had been turned face down. I stopped breathing. That photo hadn't been touched in years. I remembered placing it there after deciding I wasn't ready to look at it anymore. Turning it over had been my quiet way of pretending the past could be put away if I stopped facing it. Now it lay flat, deliberately reversed, like someone had known exactly what it meant. My hand hovered over it, trembling. Every part of me screamed not to touch it, as if flipping it back would invite something I wasn't prepared to face. But curiosity and something deeper, something aching pushed me forward. I turned the frame over. The image stared back at me, unchanged. A Christmas long ago. Smiles caught mid-laugh. A moment so alive it felt cruel now. My vision blurred as tears rose without permission. No stranger would do this. No intruder would know this mattered. A soft sound behind me made my heart leap into my throat. I spun around, nothing. Just the empty couch, the quiet room, the faint hum of electricity in the walls. But the feeling didn't leave. The sense of presence lingered, strong and undeniable, as if the room was holding its breath with me. Slowly, painfully, a realization began to form one I wasn't ready to accept. The footsteps hadn't been random. The silence wasn't empty. And whoever had walked through our house on Christmas night hadn't come to take anything. They had come to remind me of something I had tried very hard to forget. I lowered myself onto the edge of the couch, the photograph still clutched in my hand, my fingers pressing into the frame as if it might slip away again. The room felt fuller now, not crowded, but occupied by something unseen and patient. I told myself I was imagining it, that grief had a way of rearranging reality when you least expected it. Christmas had always been good at doing that, bringing the past closer than it had any right to be. I whispered the name without meaning to. It fell into the air softly, like a question I already knew the answer to. The house didn't respond, not with words, not with movement. But the feeling changed. The tightness in my chest eased just a little, replaced by something warmer, heavier. Recognition. I stood again, moving deeper into the living room, following instinct instead of fear. Near the tree bare this year, undecorated, and I might notice something else. A single ornament lay on the floor beneath it, red glass, unbroken. I hadn't taken any decorations out this year. I was certain of it. Yet there it was, placed gently, not dropped. I picked it up, and my breath caught. This one had always been special. It used to hang at eye level, exactly where it would catch the light. Someone once told me it looked like a small heart when it reflected the room. I hadn't seen it in years. I put you away, I said quietly, unsure who I was talking to. I put all of it away. The silence answered me not with absence, but with memory. I could almost hear laughter layered over the quiet, the scrape of chairs, the off-key singing that used to fill the room. I had convinced myself those sounds belonged to another life, one that couldn't touch me anymore. Standing there, holding the ornament, I realized how wrong I had been. The footsteps returned then, not behind me, but beside me. Softly careful. They didn't echo this time. They felt close, intimate, like someone moving through a space they loved. I didn't turn. I was afraid that if I did, whatever courage I'd found would disappear. I didn't mean to forget, I said, my voice shaking. I just didn't know how to keep going. The air shifted, subtle but unmistakable, like a breath released. I felt it on my skin, the faintest brush of warmth against my arm. Not a touch, nothing so physical but enough to make my eyes burn. The footsteps moved toward the hallway, slow and deliberate, as if inviting me to follow. And this time I did. I walked past the doorways, past the shadows, until I stood in front of the small room we never used anymore. I hadn't opened it in years. The handle felt colder than the rest of the house. I opened the door. The room was exactly as it had been left. Nothing disturbed. Nothing taken. The bed neatly made, the chair by the window empty. But the air was different here, heavier with memory. I stepped inside, my chest aching with the weight of everything I had avoided. On the chair lay a folded sweater. I knew it instantly. I had washed it, folded it, and put it away myself, telling myself it was just another thing. Seeing it now felt like a message written in a language only the heart understands. Tears came freely then, unstoppable. Not from fear. From understanding. The footsteps faded slowly, gently, like someone leaving a room once they knew they had been seen. The house settled again, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of what I had tried to bury and what had finally found its way back to me on Christmas night. I stayed in that room longer than I realized, standing there with the door half open, breathing in memories I had locked away for years. The sweater rested on the chair like it had always belonged there, untouched by time, waiting patiently. I reached out and lifted it, the fabric soft beneath my fingers, still carrying a faint, familiar scent. It wasn't strong just enough to hurt. I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the moment finally settling into my bones. The fear that had gripped me earlier was gone now, replaced by something far heavier and far more honest. Regret. Not the sharp kind that comes from a single mistake, but the slow kind that grows when you avoid what hurts instead of facing it. We didn't mean to leave things unfinished, I whispered into the quiet. We just didn't know how to say goodbye. The house responded the way it had all night, not with noise, but with presence. A gentle stillness wrapped around me, like the kind that comes after crying yourself empty. I realized then that the footsteps hadn't been a warning. They had been a reminder. A reminder that love doesn't vanish just because a house grows quiet, and that absence doesn't mean abandonment. I carried the sweater back into the living room and placed it carefully on the couch. The red ornament still lay in my palm, catching the dim light as if it wanted to be seen. For the first time in years, I walked to the tree not to decorate it, but to acknowledge it. I hung the ornament on a bare branch. It swayed slightly, then settled. Something inside me loosened. The clock chimed softly, pulling me back into the present. Christmas night was slipping away, minute by minute, but it no longer felt wasted. It felt necessary. I moved around the room slowly, turning on a small lamp, then another, letting light return without rushing it. The shadows retreated, losing their power. As I sat back down, a quiet understanding formed clear and undeniable. We had never been alone in this house. We had only been refusing to listen. The footsteps weren't there to scare me into remembering. They were there to guide me back to what I had loved and feared losing all at once. I closed my eyes and let the memories come freely now. The laughter, the singing, the warmth of shared moments that once defined Christmas for us. They didn't feel sharp anymore. They felt like proof. Proof that what we had was real, and that real things leave echoes. When I opened my eyes, the house felt different, lighter. As if it had been holding onto a breath for years and had finally exhaled. The silence returned, but it was gentle now, no longer accusing. It rested around me like acceptance. I didn't hear the footsteps again that night. I didn't need to. Their purpose had been fulfilled. They had walked through my fear, through my denial, and straight into my heart, leaving behind something far more powerful than terror. They left me with peace. As the final minutes of Christmas night passed, I sat quietly, the ornament glowing softly on the tree, the sweater folded beside me. Outside, the world slept, unaware of what had happened inside this small house. But everything had changed. Not because someone arrived, but because I finally remembered that love never truly leaves, it only waits to be acknowledged. The house was silent again, but this time the silence felt warm, familiar, almost comforting. The footsteps were gone, yet their meaning remained, lingering in every corner of the room. Christmas night ended the way it began, quiet and still, but I was no longer afraid of being alone. I understood now that some presences don't come to frighten us. They come to remind us of the love we try to hide from when the pain feels too heavy. That night taught me something I will never forget. Silence doesn't always mean emptiness, and being alone doesn't always mean being abandoned. Sometimes it simply means we are being given a moment to remember, to heal, and to let go. If this story touched your heart or made you pause for a moment, Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional and mysterious stories like this. Like the video, share it with someone who believes in hope, and leave a comment below what would you have done if you heard those footsteps on Christmas night. Your support helps these stories reach others who may need them the most. Stay with us, because every quiet night has a story waiting to be heard.